the 1950s, an astonishing 80% of American couples reached their 25th anniversary, and divorce rates were so low that splitting up meant social exile and financial ruin. Today, nearly half of marriages collapse. How did ordinary families turn marriage into something almost unbreakable, not through love, but by obeying a rule nearly everyone now ignores? The answer is not what you think, and the consequences still shape who stays together and why. In post-war America, the statistics behind marriage and divorce reveal a reality that now feels almost foreign. The annual divorce rate in the 1950s sat at just 2.2 per 1,000 married couples, a figure that, by today's standards, seems astonishingly low. Marriage was not just a milestone, it was the expected path, woven into the fabric of daily life. Census records from the decade show that the average marriage endured for more than 31 years, the longest stretch ever recorded in American history, with life expectancy hovering around 68 years. Couples who married in their early 20s could anticipate spending nearly their entire adult lives together, side by side, through every season. The odds of reaching a 25th wedding anniversary were overwhelmingly in a couple's favor. 80% of those who married in the 1950s celebrated a silver anniversary, a testament to the staying power of these unions. Today the contrast is stark. Fewer than half of marriages last even half that long. In the 1950s, marriage was nearly universal, with over 65% of women and nearly 70% of men married at any given moment. The institution was so common, so expected, that it shaped the rhythm of American life from coast to coast. Divorce, when it happened, was rare and often came only after decades together. Only about 1 in 5 couples who married in 1950 eventually divorced, and most separations occurred late in life. By the 1970s, the story had changed dramatically. The risk of divorce for those who married in that era doubled, with nearly half of marriages ending in separation. But in the 1950s, the numbers point to a remarkable endurance, a kind of marital longevity that seems almost mythical now. A demographer reflecting on these patterns called the 1950s the golden age of marital endurance in America. He noted, the average couple stayed together, not just because they wanted to, but because everything around them made it the default. The numbers support his observation. The average marriage lasted over 40 years, outpacing the average life expectancy. For many, marriage was a lifelong contract, not just a chapter. These statistics raise a question that lingers beneath the surface. What made these marriages so durable? On paper, the 1950s looked like an era of unbreakable unions, where the odds of divorce were slim and the expectation of lifelong partnership was nearly absolute. Yet the raw data alone can't explain what truly held couples together. If love wasn't the only ingredient, what else was at play? The answer lies not in the private feelings of the couples themselves, but in a world shaped by rules, pressures, and expectations, forces that most people today have never experienced firsthand. A single income in 1955 bought far more than it does today. The median American family earned $4,400 a year. That paycheck stretched to cover a house, a car, groceries, and all the bills for a family of 4. The average home cost just 2.3 times the yearly salary, about $10,000 for a new house in the suburbs. One income, usually the husband's, was not only enough, it was the norm. The path to homeownership was paved by the GI Bill. After World War II, nearly 40% of returning veterans used their benefits to buy a house almost immediately. Veterans Administration backed loans required little or no down payment, and banks were eager to lend to young couples starting families. Suburban neighborhoods filled with rows of modest homes, each one a symbol of stability and permanence. The message was clear. Marriage was the ticket to a secure middle-class life. But this economic foundation had a hidden cost. For most women, Marriage was not just a choice, it was a necessity. The law made it nearly impossible for married women to build financial independence. Until 1974, a woman could not open a bank account or get a credit card without her husband's signature. Jobs that paid enough to live on were off limits to most women, and single mothers faced steep discrimination if they tried to enter the workforce. If a woman left her marriage, she risked losing her home, her health insurance, and any claim to the family's savings or pension. Divorce was not just emotionally wrenching, it was financially devastating. The system was designed so that the safest and often only way for a woman to avoid poverty was to stay married, no matter how she felt about her husband. For men, marriage secured access to credit, social standing, and a reliable home life, assets that employers and banks looked for before approving loans or promotions. The numbers made the logic clear. On a single paycheck, families could buy a home, raise children, and plan for the future. Leaving that arrangement meant stepping into a world with few safety nets and little sympathy. The economic rules of the 1950s did not just encourage marriage, they made it the backbone of American financial life. For most, staying married was not just about love or duty, it was about survival. Marriage advice in the 1950s rarely promised happiness. Instead, it issued instructions, sometimes blunt, sometimes gentle, on how to endure. Manuals found in living rooms and church pews made their message clear. Marriage was a job, not a fairy tale. J.C. Furness in his bestseller, The Good Marriage, wrote, "Marriage is not a perpetual honeymoon, it is a working partnership, where each must endure boredom, irritations, and dry spells by sticking to the job, for better or worse means what it says." That phrase, "for better or worse," was not poetic flourish. It was a literal command. Dr. Lena Levine's The Modern Woman, The Successful Marriage, told newlyweds, happiness in marriage comes from fulfilling duties, not chasing it. When feelings wane, recommit to roles. Husband provides, wife nurtures, endure as partners in life's work. Manuals like these sold by the hundreds of thousands, landing on nightstands, and being read aloud at kitchen tables. The advice was consistent. Don't expect constant bliss, expect to work at it. Personal dissatisfaction was described as normal, even healthy, a sign that marriage required effort, not an excuse to leave. Work was the emphasis. Church pamphlets reinforced this ethos. A Catholic marriage guide from the era instructed, marriage is a covenant of endurance, not emotion. For better or worse binds you eternally. Personal joy follows duty. Protestant counselors echoed the same refrain. Don't seek fulfillment outside vows. Endure trials as sacrifice. Happiness is a byproduct of fidelity. Endurance was framed as duty. Therapy, when it was available, focused on helping couples adjust to their assigned roles, not on encouraging individuals to find themselves outside the marriage. The language of self-fulfillment or personal growth simply did not appear in mainstream advice. Divorce, according to Henry Bowman in the Marriage Manual, was selfishness. The solution was always the same: make it work. This cultural script shaped expectations. Marriage was a permanent commitment to duty, not a pursuit of personal happiness. Manuals and clergy taught that feelings would rise and fall, but the promise was unbreakable. The real rule was endurance, an understanding that the marriage itself mattered more than the satisfaction of either spouse at any given moment. In the 1950s, ending a marriage meant stepping into a legal maze with almost no exits. Divorce law was based on fault, and a judge would only grant a divorce if one spouse could prove the other committed a serious wrong, such as adultery, abandonment, extreme cruelty, or habitual drunkenness. The process was not just about paperwork, it was a public accusation, played out in open courtrooms where neighbors, employers, and even local newspapers could follow every detail. A family law attorney from that era might recall clients arriving already defeated. The burden of proof was steep. To show adultery, you often needed a private investigator, photographs, and sometimes staged scenes in motel rooms. Abandonment required documenting years of absence. Alleging cruelty meant exposing private pain to public scrutiny, with judges often dismissing cases for lack of sufficient evidence. If both spouses wanted out, the law forced them to invent wrongdoing, and perjury and collusion became routine. Cost added another barrier. Legal fees for a contested divorce could swallow up half a year's salary, and hiring detectives drove the price higher. For a family living on the median income of $4,400, these expenses were out of reach. The process dragged on for months or even years, with mandatory waiting periods and court-ordered attempts at reconciliation. Every step was designed to discourage dissolution. Financial penalties for the guilty party were severe, especially for women. If a wife was found at fault, she risked losing her share of the home, access to her husband's pension, and custody of her children. A woman who left her marriage without ironclad evidence of her husband's misconduct could find herself penniless and without support. Property laws tended to favor men, and pension benefits vanished overnight for divorced women. Health insurance tied to a husband's job was lost immediately. Court proceedings were public record, and the humiliation was real. The stigma of divorce was reinforced by the spectacle of these trials, turning private heartbreak into community gossip. For many couples, the legal and financial obstacles made divorce not just difficult, but nearly impossible. The law did not just discourage separation, it glued marriages together, even when love or happiness had long faded away. Church bells rang every Sunday in nearly every American town, and pews filled with families who understood marriage as a sacred promise. In the 1950s, 7 out of 10 Americans attended church regularly. For most, faith was not just private belief, but the center of community life, a place where everyone knew your story and your reputation mattered. Divorce carried a heavy cost. A woman who left her husband risked being excluded from church groups, denied membership in civic clubs, and quietly dropped from neighborhood gatherings. Parish newsletters sometimes listed names of those who had fallen away, and whispers followed families whose marriages broke apart. The label, broken home, stuck to children, affecting how teachers, neighbors, and classmates treated them. Bullying and isolation were common, and mothers who pursued divorce often faced the fear of losing custody altogether. Courts favored fathers who could show stable income and a traditional home, leaving many mothers with the impossible choice between personal safety and staying with their children. In small towns, the pressure was relentless.